You were born in '61. Do you still recall your first metal experience?
Do I still recall it?
Yeah.
I'm sure it just kind of depends on which degree of metal you want to qualify that as. My first metal experience, the new wave of British heavy metal, would be Judas Priest. Sure. The stuff that I'd heard when I started actually learning it,
Yeah.
listening to like Diamond Head. Yeah, I remember. I was in Huntington Beach. I remember when I first heard Merciful Fate, when I first heard Venom, all living in California in Huntington Beach.
And you were, well, you're now a recording artist for more than 30 years. You've released many albums. What is for you, if you look at the trend, the experience that metal has had, the progress it has made? What is for you? What was an interesting period in metal?
I think, well, it's kind of hard to answer that question because you have a couple different questions you just asked. What's the interesting period in metal? And we don't have enough time to answer that question. There's been all kinds of modifications with guitar players, with the way to learn instruments, with how to record instruments, with the things that people do on stage. The music that was written back in the 70s and 80s is fairly tame now compared to some of the music that's written by some of the extreme metal bands. So I think probably the biggest thing that I like about changes that have taken place in the metal community is that we've been accepted and that people know that we are legit. I remember someone had made fun of the metal community when I had said how I thought that metal was a lot like classical music, and they said no, and I went, yeah, and I ended up having to play with the San Diego Symphony to back up what I said, but I did it, and I think that's the thing, is so many people are quick to judge prior to investigation, and contempt prior to investigation is ignorance. So I think that there's a lot of people out there that should give heavy metal maybe a different look.
And were there certain moments that happened that it made it more acceptable? I mean, maybe artists or things that happened or crossover experience?
I don't really know what happened that made it more acceptable. I think probably the people who are the powers that be saw that heavy metal music was something that young people really gravitate toward. And they saw that there was a lot of money to be made off of festivals like this, concerts, merchandise, record sales, all that kind of stuff.
What time frame are we talking about now? What years?
I would say probably mid-'80s to mid-'90s. That's when the real, I'm not going to say explosion or boom happened, because there really wasn't an explosion or boom in the heavy metal world as much as there's been in like the pop world. So I would say probably in the mid-'80s to the mid-'90s was when we really started to be taken seriously.
So you think that mainstream media now accepts metal and actually pays attention to it now?
Mainstream
maybe.
media?
Yeah, maybe, or not.
How did we get to talking about mainstream media?
I was thinking you were saying it's more acceptable now. I was thinking maybe you also meant that more in mainstream media.
No, we're talking music. We're not talking the media.
But why do you think then, if you compare it what you just said, why do you think that mainstream media doesn't acknowledge metal as a...
I don't know that they do or they don't. I don't really follow mainstream media. For me, I have my news sources that I like to listen to, and I believe that a real journalist that is in the media knows what the word media means. It means in the middle, so you don't add your opinion to it. If you're an editorialist, sure. If you're an opinion, an op-ed writer, fine. But if you're a reporter and you're in the media, you're supposed to call it straight down the line. And I don't know that what your question is about mainstream media. I don't really know how there's any necessity to cover heavy metal unless something fantastic or tragic happens. It'd be like saying, does mainstream media cover wheat bread? I'm sure they would, but I don't really think that there's a lot of bad stuff that happens in the heavy metal community. I think if you look in the pop world right now, how many people are dying from drug overdoses, you know, for all of the terrible things they say about heavy metal people, we look pretty fit.
Yeah, that's true. So when did that happen? That metal actually became fit?
I don't know. I don't know.
Let's say, how would you describe fans of metal? Is there some sort of generic fan, or is it just all over the place?
Well, it's hard to say because there are fair weather fans in any kind of music.
Yeah.
And I think you see that when a record comes out that's exceptionally big, and then the previous record or the follow-up record isn't the same size, it kind of shows you that there's a degree of fair weather fans that liked the successful record. For us, when Countdown to Extinction came out, we had a platinum record, then a double platinum record, then a platinum record. So there was a degree of success that Countdown had because of some of the songs' radio play.
So you think that radio play actually did have a big influence on your success?
For some people well, of course it would. I mean, think about it. Let's not be silly here. If people that aren't listening to heavy metal music, the only way they're going to be able to listen to it is if it comes across the radio that they're listening to in their car, or at an event or a place that they're at. That's the beauty of serendipity. A track will come on that they'll hear and they'll say, hey, I like that song, what is that? You know, unfortunately, in the past we didn't have apps like Shazam where you could, you know, say, what is that song? Okay, well, let's check it out. Oh, well, that's Peace House, but who's buying? You know, versus like, what's that song? I don't know, forgot. You know?
Well, you mentioned that because you had radio airplay,
that was in mainstream radio. That's just radio. I never said mainstream.
No, well, over here we have mainstream radio. And
When I described my life, unfortunately, I was taking for granted that you would know I'm talking about where I live and not in other countries where I don't really know how our records perform, because I'm not a record company executive or a manager. I get these reports, and for me it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, and unless it's something that I need to know about, because I'm a songwriter. I don't keep track of all those numbers.